In today's video, we're going to add on to our shop system. We're going to add this nice Shopkeeper NPC here, hook him up with a nice dialogue system so we can talk to him, and it'll pull up our shop. Hi, my name is Michael. Welcome to my 2D action and adventure RPG tutorial series. Follow along and learn how to create your own AARPG in Godot 4 using GD script. All right, everybody. Welcome back to part 2 of the Shopkeeper mini-series. So in this one, we're going to take the shop UI that we've created and we're going to hook up to it by creating a shopkeeper. And I've actually changed the little sub bullet points related to this one, but what we're going to do is just add a simple shopkeeper. He'll be an NPC with the dialogue tree, and we will create a basic shopkeeper script that will connect to the dialogue, and we'll use that to display the shop UI after we've interacted with the shopkeeper. Okay, so I'm going to go over to my shop here, and in the previous video you saw that we had this little shopkeeper dude here, and of course, you know, if you haven't followed the previous video, you really need to, but we've got the assets already brought into our project, so we've got a sprite sheet for the shopkeeper and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this sprite 2D, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a new node, and this will be reusable, so you could have a shopkeeper anywhere you want him to go. And we'll also add to him a basic script that allows us to assign the items that will be available from his shop. So even though the shopkeeper looks the same, if you reuse it, you know, you could technically make multiple versions or whatever you want to do, but they can each have their own unique inventory that they sell. And to start, it's going to be quite simple, but let's go ahead and create a location to save all of our shopkeeper assets. So obviously we need like an NPC type for the shopkeeper, and we need this new scene. And, you know, I went back and forth on how to do this, so you can change this as you see fit. Just keep in mind that you'll need to adjust a tiny bit accordingly. But I'm going to put my shopkeeper under the interactables because that's kind of how I view it. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder here, and I'll just call it Shopkeeper. And then inside the shopkeeper, I will create a new node or a new scene, excuse me. And this will also be called Shopkeeper. And this shopkeeper will have a script. I'm going to go ahead and attach the script right now to begin with, and we're good to go. I'm going to give it a class name, even though it's probably not super necessary for this one. There we go, class name Shopkeeper. And let's just look at our scene here and let's get this set up. So one thing I said we're going to have is we're going to have an NPC. So we can do a Shift Control A, and in our project, we've got this NPC scene that we can, oh boy. Oh, there it is. It's at the top. Okay. I was expecting it to look different. I was looking for my little face icon. So we've got this NPC. We need to drop an NPC resource onto this so that, you know, it doesn't just look like Orin or Nero or whatever this dude is. So let's go ahead and go down to our NPC folder. And in the previous video, we did come here already and add the shopkeeper PNG and the shopkeeper or placeholder sprite that we'll use for our shopkeeper for the portrait. And obviously we could just make sprites and do that, but because we've got this NPC system and it interacts with our dialogue system, I want to kind of make use of that. So let's go ahead and create, let's see, underneath NPCs here, let's just create a new resource, and it'll be of type NPC resource, right? And we'll call it Shopkeeper. I don't know how many more times we're going to have to type Shopkeeper, but whatever. Okay, NPC name. Oh gosh, Shopkeeper. That might be, that better be the last time. Okay, so here we go. We need to put our sprite and our portrait in here. You know, we could search for them, but it's a little bit easier. I'm just going to put the placeholder portrait in, and then I'm going to grab the shopkeeper sprite. And as mentioned in the previous video, the shopkeeper sprite only contains just the idle down animation. It's got all the frames there if you wanted to draw over it or use it as a reference. But because I only need my shopkeeper to stand still, I didn't see the point in taking the time to animate that. After all, it would only delay me getting this video out. So I'm going to go in here. We've got our NPC. Let's go ahead and load that shopkeeper. There we go. Now we've got our shopkeeper NPC. And, you know, we could go back to this actually. I just want to look at this shopkeeper resource. One other thing we didn't set is like an audio pitch, so we can give him his unique audio pitch if we want to. And I think for him, I'm going to give it like a higher tone because, I don't know, 1.8. He's kind of like an animal looking dude, so maybe he has a higher pitch voice. Okay, so there we go. We've got this NPC. And given he's nested under a node, but that's not going to be too important. If we go back to our shop now, we could just go ahead and add an instance of our shopkeeper. There he is. And then we'll just place him back where he was behind this desk. There is actually a little positioning issue that we need to fix. Let's go back here. I guess, I don't know, why is that off? Transform 00, NPC, transform 00. I'm not sure why it's looking off over here. Transform, let's reset that. What on earth is happening? Oh, weird. I've got a little bug. Since I'm dragging him around, he's actually colliding. This must be new. I must have a setting on here that's causing him to be affected by physics while I'm dragging him around. This is new to Godot 4.4, I think. I just don't even know. I don't even know how to fix that right now. So I'm gonna reset him. Oh man. This is horrible, you guys. If you're running into this issue, I feel your pain. So let's do this. For now, let's just delete him. So now that we've deleted him, let's just come over here and let's right click and we'll say instantiate scene here. Shopkeeper. Nice. That's actually a good shortcut that maybe I should use more often. Okay, but now he's in place. Okay. A little shopkeeper, just stick him behind the desk here. And let's go ahead and just go back to the scene because we're going to do some more work in here. Okay, by the way, I looked into that a little bit. I'm going to have to do a little bit more research, but I'm fairly certain that part of the reason we're experiencing that weird issue where he was colliding while we were placing him in 2D is because this NPC is a tool script, so it's running in the editor, okay? And I'm not 100% sure why that changed from previous versions of Godot, so a little bit of homework for me. If anybody knows, go ahead and drop a comment in the description, and hopefully there's a simple way to disable that, but I'm going to just keep recording. When I go back to my shopkeeper scene, I'm going to use the dialogue interaction as the primary way that we interact with the shopkeeper. And so we'll start by adding our own dialogue interaction node here. Okay. And that's a scene. I did a Shift Control A to add that because we've created that previously. And of course, this scene requires dialogue item nodes. And I'm going to go ahead and just add a dialogue text. Now these ones I'm doing Control A. These are just nodes, right? Because we created these basic node types. So dialogue text is good to get started. And you can see we've got the name Shopkeeper and lovely placeholder. I actually kind of had fun with that. It was really short and simple and easy to add. And I just think it's adorable. I don't know. But this dialogue text obviously is kind of what the shopkeeper will say when we talk to him. So let's give him like a really cheesy default fantasy text. May I interest you in my wares? Okay. And then, of course, you could just have it go straight into the shop from here when this dialogue is finished. Or what we're going to do is we're going to add a dialogue choice so the player can say yes or no. And then maybe in the future you change this and it's like, how can I help you? And you could say buy, sell, etc. Right now, we're just building a shop where you can purchase or buy items. So let's go ahead to our dialogue interaction and add a dialogue choice. It's this yellow guy. And then underneath the dialogue choice, we need to add the branches, which are the options that they can choose. So dialogue branch, and I'll just duplicate that. The first branch can say, well, we'll change it to yes. And then the second branch will change to no. And then what we'll do is if they say no, then let's go ahead and just add an additional dialogue text because that's kind of how the dialogue branch works. If when you select the branch, then it continues with whatever dialogue items are underneath in that order, right? It's a throwback to when we made this system. And if you are not following along with this tutorial series, you can go back and find these if you want to replicate this work, or you could skip a little bit of this and just find your own way to do the interaction and have it trigger the dialogue or the shop. But this dialogue text, we'll just have it say something like this. I'll be here when you need some stuff. Okay. And I kind of like doing that actually when there's only one line, just making it centered by adding a space above it. Okay, so there we go. We've got a little bit of an interaction here. And if we go ahead and test our game, I'm going to go ahead and save this. and go to my shop scene, and I'm going to run the scene. You're going to notice that I can't actually interact with him, okay? There's an issue here where the way we've set this dialog system up, I'm going to go ahead and close this and we'll just look at it. You can kind of see that dialog box right there is like behind, it's too far behind the desk. In fact, let's go into this dialog system, and I want to make a couple quick changes to just how that's displayed. So dialog interaction, we've got this collision shape. I don't mind how it's set up. I just want to give it, not a visibility, but ordering. I want to give it a high Z index. So maybe like 100. Okay, so when we go back to the shop, now you can see it's back here. And our player has, if we turn on our debugging and visible collision shapes, and we run this scene again, you'll see our player's interaction shape, which will be in front of where he's looking. It's that green area, and it's pretty small. Obviously, you could make that bigger. I don't really want to make his interaction shape larger, but I do want it to be able to interact with this, so we can change the one that's within our Shopkeeper dialog scene here. Now, this is one thing that kind of gave me a headache. I thought, how am I going to do this? And I'd like, one of the bullet points on the previous video was that we would create a new custom like interaction node, and I don't think that's a bad idea, but it seemed like a lot of extra work on this that didn't fit well and caused more issues. And I realized there's a simple solution. You don't want to do this too willy-nilly, but what we can do is just take this dialog interaction. Since this scene hasn't changed in our project, and I don't expect it to change, and most of the changes would be in script, and that script is still attached, I'm just going to right-click on this, and I'm going to select this option called Make Local. And what you can see is it now just brought in all of the child nodes that are part of this, the original dialog interaction scene, right? If we look at here, we've got a collision shape, the sprite, and the animation player that makes that animate. And it just brought those in here. Now, the downside is if I make changes to that dialog interaction scene, this one is not going to be updated. So, you know, my Shopkeeper could potentially be outdated with changes I make to that dialog interaction. So you got to be careful with that. That being the case, now we can simply come in here and just select this collision shape, and I can give it a custom size. So I can just drag this down, something like that. Okay. Then if I save this and go back to the shop, you can see it now extends to the edge. Let's just make it go a little bit. Oop, not there. I want to go to Shopkeeper. Let's make it go just a little bit further. Okay. I think that's about far enough. Yeah. Now it comes to the edge. So now if I run the scene one more time, I should be able to, there we go. You can see he gets a little exclamation point. Now I can interact with him. And we got our first error. We'll deal with that here. Okay, so this error is one that we didn't expect when we created our dialog system. And as you can see, we're getting an out of bound index at 0. We had an assumption in our code that if we started a dialog or if we had a branch, there was always at least one dialog item underneath it for a response. And so one solution here could be that let's go ahead and stop running this. And I'm going to turn off my debug collision shapes, but we could come in here to our Shopkeeper, and underneath our first branch, when we say yes, we could have some text, right? That displays just by adding one of these dialog text items, and that would get rid of the issue. But I kind of want it to go straight to the shop, or, you know, let's fix the bug. So here's what we can do. Let's begin by opening this dialog interaction script, because this is the script that had the error, right? I think it was, or was it dialog system? Oh yeah, it was dialog system, sorry, not dialog interaction. Okay, so in the dialog system, it was right here, I guess, is where it had the error because we didn't have any dialog items. So here in start dialog, we could add a condition that if there are none, we return, but that's not going to solve the issue completely because then we might be kind of hung. I think what we want to do is we want to look at the part of the code where we progress the dialog. Okay. So that's going to be here in this show dialog, because you can see right here is where we call start dialog. Okay, so anytime we would advance the dialog, we call the show dialog function again, whether that's just advancing the conversation by hitting next or selecting a choice in our dialog system. So what I want to do is I'm gonna try and fix it right here, and I think this will work. So we'll say if, and then we have to look to see if we have any dialog items, and you can see right here, our dialog items are equal to this thing that we pass in, okay? So without knowing what goes into all of this, we know that we're passing in our items here that we're supposed to continue with, and they might not have any, which is what's happening. So if dialog items, and then we can check this just by seeing the size of the array. If it's 0, then what we can do is instead of starting a new instead of calling start dialog, we can just call hide dialog, just end the dialog, because it's like, hey, we must be done. We don't have anything. And then we can have a little else in here where we could say start dialog. Okay. I think that's sufficient. Let's go ahead and run this. Just see if it works. May interest you in my wares. Pick yes. There we go. It just ended. And that's fine. We'll make it show the inventory in just a moment here. We can talk to him again. If we say no, there we go. I'll be here when you need some stuff. Okay. So now our dialog system is working kind of more or less how we want it. Okay. Let's go ahead now and make our shopkeeper interact with the dialog and with our shop menu. Okay. So we've got a shopkeeper script, I guess, that we created. Oops. That's not what I wanted. I need to go to shopkeeper scene. Okay. Yeah, this guy. So let's open this shopkeeper script. We just created this and we haven't done anything with it yet. Now there's going to be some variables here that we're going to need, and let's go ahead and actually set most of these up. Let's export a new variable for his inventory. So we'll just call this shop_inventory. And this is going to be an array of item data. Okay. And so we already have these things. They already exist, right? If we look at our item data, it's just this data where we describe an item and some different things about it. Okay. We'll come back to that a little bit more next video. We'll touch on it maybe a tiny bit here. And then let's also go ahead and grab our dialog branch. So what we want to do is we've got some signals in our dialog system. We've got like a dialog system finished signal, but we also have the option that we can just hook into one of these branches. And if you look at this dialog branch script that I just opened, it has a signal called selected. And if we look for this, are we ever emitting it? Maybe we're not. Maybe we need to remedy that. I don't see where we're emitting it, but I think we already hooked that up. So let's go ahead and just keep going with this and make sure that it works. If not, we'll hook it up. But we want to grab a reference to this particular dialog branch. Okay. And we'll go ahead and change this to dialog branch _yes. And we'll go ahead now and set up our ready function. So here for, let's see, func_ready. Now we only need to do one thing in here, and that's take our dialog branch yes dot selected, that signal, and we'll connect. I'm pretty sure we're just emitting that signal from another script. Okay, here we go. So once we do this, we just need to respond to that. So we'll make a new function. We'll call it show shop menu, and we'll create it right here. Okay, a little bit of a function, and let's just start by printing to the dialog that we want to show the shop. This will help us test. We'll be able to see if that signal is actually working. So let's go to our shop scene, and I'm going to run it. So now if I come over here and talk to my dude and say yes, it closed. There we go. Show the shop. So that signal did emit. Okay. If you're curious where that's emitting, we could look through the code. Something we hooked up a while ago. I'm just glad that we hooked it up well enough that it actually works. Now we've got this working a little bit better, but we don't actually have a way to show the menu. And we're only going to do a tiny bit of scripting here on that menu because we're going to save the rest of the script for our menu scene for the next video. Well, let's go ahead and open that. I guess I don't have it open currently. So I'm going to go to my GUI folder, shop menu, and just open the shop menu scene. Now we did add a script. Okay. Let's look at this here. We've got this shop menu. Let's go ahead and open our script. All we did is have a visible setting to false, which is okay. But we want to just add a few basic things so that we can show and then hide this menu. Okay. So looking at this here, let's go ahead and add just a couple things related to this specific functionality that we want. And first we'll have a signal that we'll call shown. We'll have another signal that we'll call hidden. That way we can connect to these if we need to in the future. And then we'll look at our ready function. Right now we have a visible false is kind of a thing that we're setting. I think we owe it to ourselves to also keep track if this is active. So we'll just say variable is active. And so this is a Boolean, and by default that'll equal false. Okay. Now, rather than just do this hide code here in the ready, we want our show and our hide code to be a separate function that we can call when we need to. Okay. Let's go ahead and create a show menu and a hide menu function. There we go. We've got our two simple functions here that we'll be able to call. And then now in our ready, instead of setting the visibility here, I'm just going to set this to hide, call hide menu, just like that. And then, you know, one other thing that we experienced in our demo is, in fact, let's demo this right now by just commenting out the hide menu. And obviously it's not going to do anything because there's no code there. So actually I don't even need to do that. Hide menu does nothing. So let's just run the shop scene and see what happens, because if you recall, we had some issues with this. So what am I on? Shop, F6 to run it. Now my player is walking in the background, even when the shop is open. And so our shop needs to be able to interact with the game's pause system, which means that it shouldn't be paused when the game pauses, otherwise it's not going to work, right? So let's just keep that in mind while we're building this show and hide menu. I also want to just add a line. You know, typically when we've done something like this in the past, we would come in here and set our process setting to the mode to like always process. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. I just want to do it through script because I'm working almost exclusively in the script on this, and I don't want to forget that this is a setting that I'm setting. So this is an alternative way. If you don't like this and you prefer to set it in the inspector, then you can do that. I'm just going to say process mode equals, and then we want node.process mode always. Okay, that means this script will always be able to be run and called even when the game is paused. What did I do? Auto translate mode? Process mode equals node dot process mode always. I don't know why it gave me that weird autocomplete, but there we go. I guess alphabetically it made sense. Okay, so now we're going to call hide menu when it starts, but we're setting this process mode to always process, and we have a show menu function that we'll be able to call. Let's make this function do something, and then we'll hook it up. And also, because our show and our hide menu are going to have some shared functionality with just a difference of a true or false value, I'm going to make one other function. Let's call this function enable menu, and it'll require an argument of enabled, which is a Boolean, which by default will equal true. That way we could just call enable menu and it'll work. And then if we say enable menu and pass in false, then it will disable it. Okay, that's what this is going to do. So when we enable this shop menu, we want to pause the game. So we can say get tree dot paused equals, and then we'll just set it to whatever. Is that really how I spelled that? Enabled. Enabled. Let's change that spelling. Okay. And then let's see, another thing we want to do is we want to make this scene visible. So we'll say visible equals, again, enabled. And lastly, we have that is active variable. I'm going to go ahead and just put that in here and set that equal to enabled. Okay. So now when we show menu, the first thing we can do is we can just call enable menu. And when we hide the menu, we can call enable menu and pass in false. Okay. Here we're practicing a little bit of the practice that we call dry coding, you know, do not repeat yourself. So because these things would be almost the same here and here, we're creating a function to do them for us. I'm not the best at some of these principles and practices, but I like to express them from time to time when we're doing these. So those of you who are new, this might be something new that you're learning. Okay, so we have show menu, which should pause the game, and then we have a hide menu, which should unpause the game, and both of these will show or hide it, okay? But how are we going to hook this up? When we go to Shopkeeper here, we have this function. So underneath print, let's just call our shop menu, because remember, we set this up to be an auto load. We're just say shop menu dot and then there's show menu. So let's test again. Just run my shop scene here. Now when we talk to this guy, if I say yes, hey, look at that. Interesting, it didn't seem to pause the game, but it did show the menu. Okay. Let's see, but we don't have a way to close it, and you can see it can pause in the background. So what did we do wrong here? We have shop menu.show menu, which should enable it. Get tree.paused equals true. And this issue is actually a little bit perplexing that it didn't pause, because that should be all we need to do. But I happen to know, because I'm the creator of this, that it's got to be related to our dialogue system. Because if you recall, our dialogue system does pause the game. And so I believe what's happening is simply that here we're calling enable the menu, and so it's pausing the game, but then the dialogue system is like that same frame or maybe the next frame unpausing the game, because that's what the dialogue menu should do. But that's okay, because we can fix this very simply here, because our dialogue system is something that we can tie into. I'm going to go ahead and pass in a variable here into show menu, because I'm trying to make this a little bit robust. We may call this from some other place other than the dialogue, but if it is dialogue triggered, so I'm going to make an argument that we call dialogue triggered. Man, 3Gs. It's almost as good as 4G. Okay, dialogue triggered. This is a Boolean, and we'll set it equal to true by default. So we don't even have to pass that in. But then if we called show menu from something other than this dialogue connection, we might want to set that to false. Okay, so we'll say if dialogue triggered, then we know we need to wait for the dialogue system to finish. So let's just add an await, and we can grab our dialogue system, and it has a finished signal that gets emitted when the dialogue has completed. So I'm currently on my shop scene, so I'll just run it. Now let's talk to him again. Should fix the bug. So if I say yes, okay, game is paused. I can't walk or anything, but dialogue menu is working. Okay, and I can still pause it in the background, and I can't close it. So I guess we got two more things we got to fix here. Okay, things are actually coming along pretty good, though. We've got this functionality kind of coming together, and the shopkeeper himself is mostly done. He's pretty straightforward and easy to implement. Okay, so let's just flesh out a couple things so that we can wrap this up and call it good, and then we'll be ready to move on to the next video where we can actually build and implement the shop menu. So what I want to do here, let's just put a bow on a few of these things real quick while we're doing this, but we should emit our shown signal. So shown.emit. Okay, and then also in our hide menu, we should emit our hide signal. So hidden.emit. Okay, so we're going to emit those signals when it's appropriate. And of course, this is still on our shop menu script. But let's come into our shop menu. I'm going to go ahead and close this dialog interaction scene. Okay, in the shop menu, we do want to maybe connect one thing. We have a script here. Let's just connect that close button and maybe provide one other way that we can close this menu. So let's just do that, and then we can leave the rest of this for the next video. Let's see, we don't have anything referenced in our script here. So I'm going to come down and find in the shop menu, I want to find that close button. Here it is. And I can just drag and control and drop that in there. Now you remember we made this and many other of our nodes so that they could be accessed by name, which really simplifies this reference script or line of code. Really nice and easy. So now what we can do is we can come into here into our ready function, and we'll connect to the clicked or the pressed signal on that. So we can say close button dot pressed dot connect, and we'll just connect the hide menu button or function, the hide menu, just like that. Okay, let's go ahead and run the shop again and just make sure that that's working. Oops, I hit escape. I don't know why. Okay, so now if I come down here and click close the menu, and our game is back to running. Okay, so that's good. I do want to hook up the escape or the cancel button to do this as well. So we'll come into our script, our shop menu script, and I'm going to put this up here towards the top. I want to hook into the unhandled input function that we have, right? Because this, anytime we have an input that hasn't been handled by the Godot engine, we can react to it here. And the first thing we'll do is we'll check, this is the only place I think right now I'm using this, but if is active is false, right? We set that is active variable when we display this menu. If it's not active, then we're not going to try and handle the input. Otherwise, we can say if event dot is action pressed, and then we could say pause. And I think there's actually, well, let's just hook this one up. I think we have a cancel button too, right? But pause is like our escape key or our option key. Then what we can do is let's go ahead and say get viewport. I want to set this action as handled, I think, or to set the input as handled. I think that'll prevent the pause menu from showing. So if not, we can handle that. Set input as handled. Okay, that means if this script picks it up, no other script will. I think the pause menu actually has precedence on this one, so it may still show the pause menu. We'll do that in a second though. And then otherwise we can say hide menu. Okay, so quick little test again. Just hit F6 and run this. So now I should be able to talk, go into my menu and hit escape. Hey, and there we go. It closed it. And actually it did not bring up the pause menu. If I hit escape again, it does. Okay, so yeah, sure enough, that worked. Just like I had hoped. Let's go ahead and just for fun, let's just give this a little bit of juice here. I'm going to come into my game here, and I want to add some constants. I want to add some references. We're going to need these next video, but we've got this audio in our shop menu. And I'm just going to bring this in, hold Control or Command and drop that in there. So we've got these sound effects. Okay. So what we could do is let's make a play audio function like I tend to like to do. So play _ audio. This will just get a little bit of work out of the way for the next video, so we don't have to focus too much on this. Our play audio, we can just pass in the audio stream that we want to play. And then we'll set it and play it. Oh, but we need to know what to set it to. So let's come up here. Let's get another onReady variable. Boom, audio stream player. Set the stream to the audio value. And then we'll play it. And then what I want to do is when we show the menu, I want to just play that open menu that we've got. So I brought that in and it's called Open Shop, I guess. Okay, so under Show Menu, we'll go ahead and just do this here. We'll say Play Audio. And what was it? Open Shop. There we go. Okay, so now it should play a little sound effect. Man, we're testing this a lot today. Let's go ahead and run it one more time. Nice. It's kind of a weird sound. It's maybe like a treasure chest opening now that I think about it. But it is what it is. Okay, cool. There we go. Now, the one last thing I want to do as we wrap up this video is just look at our Shopkeepr script, and we have this shop inventory. Let's do a little bit with that, at least get it started, and then we'll be able to put this to bed for the video. We already have declared this export variable of our shop inventory, so let's just look at the scene here. Now I've dropped an instance of the Shopkeepr into my shop scene. So he's got this shop inventory right here. And so we could just, I'm going to go ahead and just give him a bunch of items. And all we have to do is just load, oops, I clicked off of him. But all we have to do is just load some items in here. So we've got the item data that already exists. So an apple, yeah, let's throw in a ninja suit. We should probably have like a potion. We can have a sword. Let's get the iron sword in there. We'll throw in the katana. I mean, I'm putting most of the items we've got, right? And a stone, because who doesn't want a stone? Okay, so now he's got items. We need to pass them to our shop. And we're not going to do much with it other than pass it to the shop, but let's just look at the Shopkeepr script. So we've got this shop menu.show menu, and we already added this one optional argument, which is the dialog triggered Boolean so we can determine if it was the dialog that opened this or something else. But we want to be able to pass in the shop items right here as well. So we'll just simply refer to these as the items, and it's an array. Again, just the same variable type that we already set up. It's an array of item data, just like that. Okay. So we need to pass that in now. Now, if we go back to our Shopkeeper script, eventually this will give us, there we go, giving us a little error because, hey, we expected at least one argument, but received 0. So we'll just pass in that shop inventory. Like that. Okay. And then we'll go to our shop menu, and for the sake of this video, we'll just go ahead here and we'll just print our items and our items.size, maybe, just so we can see if we've got them all. I'm going to go ahead and run this shop. Boing. And it looks like we have show the shop. And oh, I wrote that wrong. I needed to put some of those on there. I'll go ahead and save that and go back to the game. So if I close and I open the shop again. Okay, there we go. Six items. And here's the reference. Obviously the resources. So that looks like gobbledygook. If we had iterated through and printed the names of the items, we would have had the names, okay? But what we'll do in the next video is we'll hook those up and we'll start populating the shop with actual items. We'll update the description on those items, and we'll make it so that the player can purchase the items, okay? So it'll be pretty cool. But I hope you guys have learned something following along with this video. It's a little bit short and sweet compared to the last one, but I think it makes it a little bit more digestible. If you have any comments or questions, please drop them in the comments section below. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already and you want to see what's coming next. And I want to give a shout out as usual to my Patreon subscribers. I greatly appreciate them and their willingness to support me. And as always, we'll see you next time.